Good evening to everyone. This is Dr. Jubert Benedicto from the Philippine Tuberculosis Society. Actually, we are now in my research office, PTSI building along E. Rodriguez Avenue in Quezon City. So again, thanks to our partner, Cha and Dr. Eloy Marcelo. And of course, this webinar is through the partnership of the Philippine Medical Association and the Philippine TB Society Incorporated. For this webinar, we have entitled this appropriately, The Goal of Ending TB in the Philippines, Wisdom or Folly. Just to inform everyone, we had a successful World TB Day commemoration just this morning. It was led, of course, by the Department of Health's National TB Program and, of course, the Philippine Coalition Against Tuberculosis, and there were around 700 to 800 participants during that commemoration. For this particular webinar, the main objectives are the following. To restate the post-2015 global goal, which is to end global tuberculosis epidemic and the vision of a world free of TB. That means zero deaths, disease, and suffering due to TB. Describe the end TB strategy. Firm up accomplishing this goal in terms of its milestones and target. Illustrate global acceptance and support for this goal and strategy. And possibly along this line, if we're going to situate it in the Philippines, report the main accomplishment of the 2010 to 2016 Philippine Plan of Action to Control TB, and as far as the strategy of the upcoming PhilPac Beyond 2016. Possibly during the discussion, we will be also touching certain pros and cons of adopting the NTB strategy in the Philippines. And of course, we would like to hear some private sector perspective as well, because we do know that in order to control TB, this is not solely the government's responsibility. In the meantime, I would like to extend our special thanks to Dr. Alfred Lardizabal, our first speaker, and the Global Tuberculosis Institute of the Rutgers University for their participation in this meeting. So for this particular meeting, there will be three main speakers today. I will introduce the first speaker and then subsequently the second and the third. The first speaker is Dr. Alfred Lardizabal, the Executive Director of the New Jersey Medical School Global Institute of TB in Rutgers University in New Jersey, USA. I think it's now around 7:15 a.m. there. The institute is one of 5 CDC-funded regional training and medical consultation centers. And we are proud to say that Dr. Lardizabal received his medical training at the University of Santo Tomas in the Philippines and subsequently completed his residency in internal medicine at New Jersey Medical School, where he went on to complete fellowship training in pulmonary medicine. He will present to us certain perspective as far as the global end TB strategy, and basically he will be coming from the perspective of a TB program implementer, particularly in the US. Alfred, I know that you woke up early for this webinar, and I sincerely thank you for participating. Good morning there, and the airwave is yours.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the invitation to speak. I understand this is part of the local celebration for World TB Day, and you know, it's a day we commemorate to remind us how far we've gone, as well as how far we must go to achieve TB elimination. So 134 years ago, the cause of tuberculosis was found, and today we still deal with this infectious disease as highly preventable and treatable as the world's largest killer. So what I've been asked to do is to introduce the WHO and TB strategy to the audience and try to understand the implications and where we're heading in the next 20 years or so in terms of tuberculosis elimination. So what I will try to do here is talk about the TB burden, the progress we've made, and the challenges ahead of us, and how we're going to address the problem moving forward. As most of you know, the burden of tuberculosis is carried by the most vulnerable in our communities, in our society, the poor and disadvantaged. Women and children certainly are very much affected by tuberculosis. In certain countries and situations, refugees, migrants, prisoners are vastly more affected by tuberculosis, and in any community, those with comorbidities such as HIV co-infection, malnutrition, alcohol abuse, and very importantly, diabetes are increasingly risk factors for tuberculosis. One thing also that I have to emphasize is those who are exposed to tobacco use and indoor air pollution are increasingly recognized as those who are affected disproportionately with tuberculosis. So over the last 15 years, most of you might be familiar with the UN's Millennium Development Goals, which basically try to set 8 goals to advance human development and well-being. And within the 8 goals, if you focus on number 6, that's where it focuses on containing HIV/AIDS, malaria, and other diseases. During the MDG era, TB unfortunately was kind of buried under goal number 6, despite the lack of starring role in the MDG 8 goals. We were able to be successful in decreasing tuberculosis incidence and prevalence, as well as mortality globally. You can see here the downward slope for both the incidence on the left and the prevalence on the right, as well as mortality, which is the gray line in the bottom. So 37 million lives have been estimated to have been saved between 2000 and 2013 under this MDG strategy and the Stop TB strategy. Likewise, the increase in this graph here of those who have been put into appropriate therapy globally, we've been able to achieve over the last 5 or so years more than 85% treatment, successful treatment among those who've been diagnosed with tuberculosis. So this is also an achievement, and this speaks of most national TB programs around the world. So it's been estimated that since 1995, 61 million people have been cured of tuberculosis. So a lot of good work and a lot of successful work on the global level. If we look at these curves too, you can see that even among people living with HIV, the prevalence, the incidence, and the mortality has also been contained and has started going downwards over the last 5 years or so. So what's the global burden of tuberculosis as of 2013, 2014? I didn't want to change the graphic here, but the numbers are similar between 2013 and 2014. As you can see here, in 2013, about 2014, actually about 9.6 million developed tuberculosis. That's still a very large number. 1.5 million individuals, men, women, and children, died of tuberculosis. And as of last year, really has been noted to be still the largest killer in terms of infectious diseases, more than HIV on the global level. There have been an estimated 1.2 million people living with HIV who have developed TB in 2014, and about 480,000 people, about 500,000 people, estimated to have developed multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, meaning a resistance to rifampin and isoniazid. Close to half of that number died. So the numbers are still staggering despite the successes we've achieved over the last 15, 20 years. So to summarize our advance in terms of TB control, the incidence has now started to fall slowly and is on the MDG, on track with the MDG goals. And it's been decreasing at a rate of 1.5% per year. We've been able to reduce TB mortality by 45% since 1990. As I mentioned, 37 million lives have been saved since 2000, and 4.8 million lives have been saved since 2005 through TB HIV collaborative activities. I also mentioned in the earlier slide that we've been able to achieve across the board 86% cure rate in most programs, and 61 million patients have been cured of tuberculosis between 1995 and 2013. So you're all familiar with the incidence map globally from the WHO, and the high incidence areas. Unfortunately, my screen didn't show the map before the pie chart, but you're all familiar with the fact that incidence rates for tuberculosis are highest in sub-Saharan Africa with the dark green coloring, and Southeast Asia as well as the Western Pacific region. So Southeast Asia, about 38% of TB incidence globally, and Western Pacific, about 18% globally. If you were to subdivide these regions, 34% come from India and China, 23% from India alone. When we look at MDR-TB as a crisis, you're all familiar with the hotspots globally, and that's the former Soviet Union, and that's where the highest incidence of multi-drug resistance is found. However, also areas in South Asia and Southeast Asia have high incidences of MDR-TB. India, China, Russia, Pakistan, the Ukraine have contributed to 60% of all MDR-TB cases globally. So in 2015, 5 priorities for action were identified by the WHO. I mentioned earlier that it's estimated that the global incidence of TB was about 9.6 million in 2014. However, only 6 million of those estimated cases were actually recorded in the system. So there are missed cases that are not being detected globally. Still, about a third are not being detected globally. So that's a big, big problem, reaching the missed cases, estimated to be around 3 million or more. We have to address MDR-TB as a crisis. We have to accelerate our response to TB HIV, and we have to increase the financing gap for implementation and research and development. We have to intensify research and ensure rapid uptake of innovation. So it's not just a matter of discovering things. We have to include in that process how to implement these innovations at the local level. So those have been identified as 5 priorities for action in 2015, and this is found in the Global TB Report of 2015. And also, all these things have been developing all around us. We've transitioned from the MDG to the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations. This time, the Sustainable Development Goals are 17 goals, again, essentially focused on advancing human development through the erasure of poverty, through the improvement of health and gender equality, a broad range of goals for the SDGs to attain by 2035. This includes climate action. For tuberculosis, we'll focus on the goal number 3, which is good health and well-being. So if we look at that a little more closely, this time TB has sort of a more prominent role, and it's in goal 3.3. There are 13 targets for healthcare under goal number 3. And 3.3 is ending the epidemic of AIDS, TB, malaria, and other neglected tropical diseases, combating hepatitis, waterborne illnesses, and other communicable diseases. So here we're being highlighted in terms of tuberculosis for the SDGs to be achieved by 2030. With that, the WHO also convened the 67th World Health Assembly in Geneva and unanimously approved in May of 2014 what is now known as the NTP strategy. And this is what we're going to kind of focus on in the next several slides. So the NTP strategy, the heart of this strategy is really the patients and the communities affected by tuberculosis. It's a very holistic approach to controlling TB and ending tuberculosis on a global level. It's an accelerated strategy to build on what we've achieved over the last 20 years or so. So this strategy has identified 4 major barriers in the fight against tuberculosis. On top of that is the weak healthcare systems that plague many of the developing world. And this not only speaks of a healthcare systems at the public level, but also the private sector healthcare systems that inevitably are involved in tuberculosis care. Another big barrier to our fight against tuberculosis are the social determinants that are part of tuberculosis: poverty, poor nutrition, certainly which contributes to other medical problems like diabetes, the aging population, and indoor air pollution, as well as tobacco use. They also underline the lack of effective tools and the continuous unmet funding needs for moving TB elimination forward. If we look at our paradigms over the years in terms of TB control and TB elimination, we've moved from 1995. Before 1995, there was no concerted effort, really. And as of 1995, the next 10 years focused on what we all know as the DOT strategy: political commitment, case detection, and enforcing treatment through DOT, etc. The Stop TB strategy kicked in 2005 and essentially ended in 2015. And essentially with this, we've expanded the DOT strategy. This was accompanied with economic growth and more funding. In the next 20 years, we move into the NTB strategy, and with that strategy, we hope to optimize available tools, provide universal health coverage, and social protection for TB patients, use new tools, and enhance economic growth. Here's a more detailed review of the various strategies over the last 25 years. And you're all familiar with the earlier strategies, the DOT strategy and the Stop TB strategy. With the Stop TB strategy, what's really different was that we started to focus on TB, HIV, MDR, TB, and other challenges, and focused on health system strengthening with engagement of various stakeholders in the community. With the NTB strategy, we focus on three main pillars, and that's outlined here. I'll speak to the three pillars in the next slide. The vision and the goal of the NTB strategy is, as Dr. Benedicto mentioned earlier, was a world free of TB. Is a world free of TB in the next 20 years. 0 deaths, 0 TB disease, and 0 TB suffering. It's really primarily a vision to aspire towards, perhaps not something we will see in our lifetime, but certainly worth aspiring to. The goal is to end the global TB epidemic. So this is a little more practical. How do we end TB, and how do we define the end of the global TB epidemic? It's bringing down the case rates to less than 10 cases per 100,000 population. So in terms of the Philippine situation, I think we are in the mid 200 range, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a long road to achieving less than 10 cases per 100,000. So what are the indicators for the NTB strategy? What we hope to achieve is the reduction of TB deaths compared to 2015 by 95% by 2035. To reduce the TB incidence rates compared to the 2015 rates by 90%, which will be around less than 10 per 100,000 by then. And most importantly, we are hoping to achieve 0 number of TB-affected families facing catastrophic expenditures due to tuberculosis. So here are the three pillars again. The pillar 1 is integrated patient-centered TB care and prevention. That's the one word that I will have to underline. Prevention is now part of our strategy. Pillar 2 are bold policies and supportive systems, and this speaks to the public sector and policymakers. And pillar number 3 focuses on intensified research and innovation. These three pillars are going to be successful and will be able to move things forward only if they're built on a foundation of government stewardship and accountability with monitoring and evaluation, building a strong coalition with civil society and communities, a very important component. Doing all this while promoting human rights, ethics, and equity, again, was never mentioned in the past, but now we look at human rights, ethics, and equity as very important components of the strategy. And lastly, adaptation of the strategy and targets at the country level, the national level, but very importantly with global collaboration. A closer look at the three pillars is essentially detailed here. And for pillar number 1, it's diagnosis and treatment of all people with tuberculosis. Early diagnosis is key. Treatment of all is key. Collaborative TB HIV activities is important. Unfortunately, for this NTB strategy, they didn't highlight diabetes and the emerging epidemic of diabetes globally. But I personally believe that that's very important to kind of initiate collaborative activities between TB and diabetes care. And number four, and pillar number one is preventive treatment of all persons at high risk for tuberculosis, as well as vaccination against tuberculosis. So we're hoping to come up with vaccines that will enhance our goal towards TB elimination in the next 20 years. Second pillar, bold policies and supportive systems, focuses on political commitment, community engagement, and social protection and poverty alleviation. The third pillar focuses on intensified research and innovation. And again, this focuses on discovery and development, as well as rapid uptake of new tools, interventions, and strategies for TB elimination. Included here, as I mentioned earlier, is optimization of implementation of all these innovations. So, unfortunately, the animation isn't working here, but anyway, if we were to not do anything different in terms of our approach to TB, we will continue on our global trend, which is a decrease of 1.5% per year, and will not reach our goal in 2035 of less than 10 per 100,000 cases. Now, if we optimize our use of current and new tools in the pipeline and pursue universal health coverage and social protection, this will accelerate the decline by 10% per year by 2025. And if nothing else changes, continue at a decrease of 5% per year to 2035. Again, it will not bring us to our goal of less than 10 per 100,000. However, if by 2025 we introduce new tools, a vaccine, newer drugs, shorter regimen for treatment of active TB and latent infection, and increasing our point of care testing for TB diagnosis, this will certainly accelerate the decline by 17% per year, and will accelerate our progress to our goal of less than 10 per 100,000 by 2035. So really, we have to optimize what we have today and accelerate the new tools that we have in the pipeline. We have to continue our research in terms of vaccines, new drugs, and shorter regimen to address aggressively both active and latent TB infection. And with those key approaches, we should get to our goal by 2035. So we have to advocate for high-level political commitment. Multi-sectoral collaboration will be key in terms of accelerating this strategy. High-level national mechanisms to implement strategies are needed. We have to assess, and this is not just, I'm not just speaking from the U.S. perspective, this is applicable to any program. We have to assess the epidemic locally, and we all have to know our epidemic in order to address the epidemic appropriately, and we have to collaborate. We have to utilize relevant ministries. So it's not just really the ministries of health that should be focusing on this TB elimination effort. Here's a slide from The Economist. And in terms of advancing economies, trade liberalization is supposedly on top of this list there. Appropriate tax collection is on top of that list there, but not very far down is reducing TB. as a way to advance national economies. So if you're going to speak of collaboration, it's not just the Ministry of Health. It probably should be ministries of finance and economy that should be looking at this as a way to advance development. And then finally, national programs should enhance their collaboration internationally to move things forward. I think this is my last slide, and I thank everyone for their attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lardizabal. Indeed, that was a clear situationer as far as the global condition is concerned, as far as TB remaining a burden, and of course that bold strategies are really needed in order for us to meet that end TB strategy. And I thank you for sharing with us some encouraging figures that indeed we are doing something. We might be doing something good because we can see some dent in terms of those TB figures. With your permission, maybe we can entertain our reactions and questions after all the three speakers have given their talk, so that we can entertain reactions, because these three lectures are so interconnected that maybe some of your concerns may be addressed by the second or the third lecturer. So it is now my pleasure to introduce our second speaker, Dr. Celine Garfield, who's the current manager or head of the National TB Control Program of the Philippines. She will give us now the NTP's perspective as far as the NTB strategy is concerned, the goal of ending TB epidemic specifically in our country, Philippines. And a related question may be, is NTB strategy really prime time for the Philippines? So it's now my pleasure to give the airtime to Dr. Celine Garfield.
Okay, so this is the TB control in the Philippines, and let me discuss what will be or what are the plans of the program on how do we move on after reaching the MDGs and moving towards the SDGs. However, even if we already reached the MDGs, we are still one of the 30 countries with high TB burden. And when we say high TB burden, it's not only for the drug-susceptible TB, but this would also include the MDR TB. The only list that the Philippines is not included is for the TB HIV. But we know that as of the current situation, the HIV prevalence in the country is really increasing. So in terms of the NTB strategy, Philippines as one of the WHO member states, we committed that we will support this global NTB strategy, and this was done last May 21, 2014. So we really cannot say no, but we have to support this NTB strategy. So for the country, the guide is the National Strategic Plan. So we have first the 2010 to 2016 PhilPac. So we did this in 2010. So this was done or formulated with a multi-sectoral participation. Then in 2013, the midpoint of the implementation of PhilPac, we did a joint program review and we updated our targets, since some of the targets were already reached, and we updated this. Then just last March 6 to 18, we did another program review to check what have we done for the past years, from 2010 to 2016. Since we are now moving towards the NTB strategy, so we want to address the SDGs, wherein we should look into equity, multi-sectoral partnership, the universal healthcare, and seeing to it that we do not leave somebody behind. And this is also moving towards the NTB strategy, wherein the targets are really ambitious, wherein we're saying that there will be zero TB deaths and no catastrophic costs. So for us to have or to ensure that how do we progress in ending the NTB strategy, for this year, we are doing a lot of activities. So the first, as I already mentioned, we have the joint program review, and we also have the ongoing National TB Prevalence Survey. The last NTPS was done in 2007. So next year, by 2017, we will know if there's really a decrease in the burden of tuberculosis. So aside from that, we will also be doing an inventory study for us to determine if where are the missing TB cases. Are they in the private sector or they are just within the public sector but we are not reporting them well? Then aside from that, we will be also doing the catastrophic cost study so that we will have a baseline data on the catastrophic cost. How much are the TB patients paying for them to be treated for tuberculosis? And the most complicated activity that we'll be doing is we'll be having the TB modeling for us to check which strategies would really help us meet the NTB strategy. So for this, we need good data for us to say or to have a better forecast of the strategies that we will be doing. So this is the NTB strategy, and this has been presented already. So I'll go straight now to the plans of the country or what we are doing currently. So for the Pillar 1, which is the integrated patient-centered care and prevention, I would say that this is the comfort zone of the program, since this is more or less like the DOT strategy that we've been doing since 1997. But this time, we are expanding the strategies or the coverage. Like for the early TB diagnosis and universal DSC and screening of contacts and high-risk groups, the plan and the current situation for the NTP is we are already expanding the services. We are introducing new tools, and this is the Gene Expert. Our plan is, as of now, our plan is to have one Gene Expert, at least one per province. But once we have done this, we want to ensure that we will have this as the primary diagnostic tool for all presumptive TB. Meaning, when you go to the health center, if you are a presumptive TB, we will not be doing a smear microscopy, but we will be having the Gene Expert. As of now, we are only doing the primary diagnostic tool for children, those with high-risk groups or belonging to the high-risk groups like the inmates, and for the PLHIV. So once we have the full coverage of the expert, we'll have this as the primary diagnostic tool for all presumptive TB. Then for this pillar, we are also looking into the integration of services for all. And this means that in the health center, they will be providing services for the drug-susceptible TB and the drug-resistant TB. And we are starting this with our IDOTs, the integrated DOT services, meaning the health center would now be doing screening and starting of treatment for both drug-susceptible and drug-resistant TB. So currently, this is done in selected regions like the National Capital Region and Region 6 and Region 10. Then we're also doing the integration of the services for children and adults. And currently we already have the TB and HIV. And we are moving towards TBBM and then TB and paragoniasis. Then we will be also expanding the coverage of our IPP since currently we're only doing this for children below 5 years of age and for PLHIV once we excluded that they have the active TB. So for the health workers, Pillar 1 would be easy since this is just an expansion of the DOT services, but this would be done in collaboration with other programs, with other partners. For Pillar 2, so this is both policies and supportive systems. So this is now moving outside the comfort zone of the health program. So for the health workers, this is working not just within the health sector, but also other government agencies. So for this, we're working on the approval of the Comprehensive TB Elimination Plan Act. And this is now for the signature of the President for it to become a law. And once this is signed, we have 90 days to do the implementing rules and guidelines. And once this is implemented, TB would now be a mandatory reportable disease, and there would also be a budget for TB control, not just from the Department of Health, but also from other organizations or other government agencies like the PIA. Then this would also ensure a multi-sectoral coordination. And aside from this, we have to engage all healthcare providers. This is already part of our PhilPact, but this time when we say engaging all healthcare providers, we should ensure that they should provide quality TB services and they should also report their TB cases. And the engagement would also include the civil society. And this would also include engagement of our patient groups. Then we are now coordinating with PhilHealth to have our MDR-TB package, since this would address the catastrophic cost target that this should be zero. Then, as of now, we have our CUP partnership. This is the Comprehensive and Unified Policy to Control Tuberculosis. So this involves 17 government agencies and 5 other organizations. PhilCat is included here. And this will ensure that the provision of services is not only from the health sector, but also from the other government agencies, since we should be bold and we should ensure that supportive systems are in place. The most challenging part of this pillar would be the social protection and poverty alleviation and actions on other determinants of TB. The program really needs support on how we are going to ensure this component of the global NTB strategy. For Pillar 3, this is regarding the intensified research and innovation. The program currently have the research agenda, and this is always based on the strategic plan. So for us to be aligned with the global TB strategy, we should sustain this. But aside from having the agenda, we also should ensure that there is the capacity of our health workers to do research. How do we make our work easy? Or how do we ensure that our patients are satisfied with the services that we are doing? So we will be providing capacity building, and this will be done in coordination with partners. So as of now, we are doing a training on research, and this is our partner here is the CDC, wherein they are providing the technical assistance, and we are now on module 3. So hopefully we will have the output from this training by the end of the year. Then the next is we need to establish a TB research network, and there should be policies in place to support this, for we know that research should not only be done by the health workers, but this should also be done by the other partners. So this is the plan of the program, and as I have mentioned, we already did our strategic, we review already our strategic plan. So we'll be awaiting for the final write-up of the strategic plan, and by the third quarter, we will be already formulating our strategic plan for 2017 to 2022. When we do or when we draft this plan, we will be engaging different partners and different stakeholders, and we want to ensure that this plan is not just from the TB program, but this should also include from the community, from the health workers, and from all the partners, and this would include the local government units. So this is all for the TB program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Celine, for giving us those NTP perspective. And it is really good to note that Philippines is, of course, extremely proud of its accomplishment of hitting its goals in terms of TB control. And we would like also to note that, of course, the NTP strategies that you have articulated are in fact in synchrony with the global strategy that was lectured by the first speaker, Dr. Alfred. I got a good praise from you, multi-sectoral partnership. And of course, it's now my honor to introduce our last speaker, who is Dr. Camilo Roa Jr. He is a pulmonologist involved in private practice and the founding chair of the Philippine Coalition Against TB. He is also currently the Vice President of the Philippine Tuberculosis Society. Dr. Roa is a graduate of the Cebu Institute of Medicine and is now a Professor 12 in the University of the Philippines College of Medicine. He will present to us his perspective coming from a private practitioner as far as the NTB strategy is concerned. Dr. Roa is joining us from Tacloban, Leyte, where he led the reopening of the PTSI TB Pavilion, which was destroyed by Typhoon Yolanda. Dr. Roa, I really hope that you have a good internet connection because it's now your turn.
Microphone. And you have here, ilan ba tayo? Almost 50 people joining us from Tacloban. All members of the Philippine Medical Association, some from ECP, and we have the Inspire group. All the pulmonologists also helping us here. My role here is to think as a private practitioner, which I am really one. Although I am employed under the UP College of Medicine, I am employed there each, but not to practice. My practice is mainly as a private MD. So, just to check, you can see my presentation?
Yes, po.
Okay.
Yes,
so,
po.
how can the private practitioners really get involved and, in fact, facilitate the achievement of the TB strategy and its vision of TB elimination? Now, we showed these targets before in another way. Just says here that there should be no TB anymore. But of course, physically there's still TB, but it's not really a big problem anymore. And then we call it NTB, you know. And there's momentum actually worldwide. There is acceptance in many countries, including high-burden countries, where it's really a challenge because to run after TB faster than we did will require a lot of resources and equipment. But look, we have these countries joining in and partnering with all available groups to speed the development of, in addition, political will have the tools with which to be used with the political will. For example, India has funded a lot also its capacity to run TB and is now using a new drug as part of its program. I just go through this. So this is Alliance, so this must be South Africa. South Africa has included TB in the universal health coverage, and I am so happy it was mentioned as a goal, especially NDR treatment, because really if you have NDR, you have to pay for the treatment. It's really incapacitating. Okay, of course, South Africa is a hotspot for HIV, and they have a big problem, but they are working on it, and they have actually shown also a decline in the deaths from TB in HIV patients. Thailand is also on board. The Russian Federation works a little different. They created a committee. Siguro si Vladimir Putin ang head dito. Sumusunod lahat. Okay. And the mortality and the other statistics are going down. They put a policy that everybody follows. Pag sinabi nila, notify all cases of TB, notify lahat. Otherwise, you land in Siberia. Okay. We have here countries that show the increased effort in research. And in Brazil, we have the READY TB, a national network of TB researchers, basic science people, clinical trialists, and those doing operational research studies to make sure they have the tools to treat TB, handle TB in their own locale, because we have different scenarios, different realities to work with when we handle tuberculosis. Vietnam, we have Victory, Vietnam Integrated Center for Tuberculosis and Spirology Research. Quite a name, but they are serious really in making sure research is there to enhance the way they will handle TB. Like us, we have the TB prevalence survey. Ours is, as Dr. Grafin mentioned, should be completed towards the end of the year and will be reported next year. Okay, and they are also very much involved in MDR-TB as we are. Now, the next slide is really a reality check. Now, we saw Dr. Alfred. Alfred, thank you very much, by the way, for joining us from New Jersey. And we saw this, I minimized this vertically, because here in this example, the prevalence is only up to 100. But in the Philippines, our reality is, doon ng prevalence natin, we are coming from much, much higher level. Okay, sana GDP yan, pero hindi. It's a rate of tuberculosis in the country. Now, if we follow this trajectory and put it here, talagang siguro pati yung ako ko sa tuhod, hindi na makita yung TB and TB. No? So, to achieve that, we really have to do a lot to make the trajectory like this. And, you know, doing all these things that were mentioned will help, but really this is a big effort and a big dream. But you know, it's always nice to dream. I mean, when we don't dream and just accept status quo. In a way, this may be a dream, but we should engage everybody to work for it. And do what Dr. Alfred said. We maximize what we can do with what we have and contribute to the development of newer tools. And here is where the private sector is very important. The next slide, this slide shows that in this country, okay, 70% of the healthcare providers are actually private. Okay, and they take care of 30% of the population, and only 30% of the healthcare providers, doctors, nurses, midwives, is na battery low, Anyway, it should be, wait, I should have enough here. Okay, ano yung plug? Because my battery is not below. Okay. But if you look at, in fact, doctors, lalo nang mas konti yung nasa government. So, almost 95%. And in this room, for example, I have here packed with in this. How many are in government? So, again, about 5%, 95%, 90% are in private practice. For the plans of the country to succeed in controlling TB, the private doctors should be part of the solution. And it is, I think, it should be the case that the government will actually lead us, allow us to participate. And it has really been doing fine to do it. And natanggal para dito. Okay. Now, this is also the other collaborative side. If you ask patients, where do you want to go for consult? Okay, for TB and non-TB, actually, a big percentage of the consult goes to the private doctor. Just again, re-emphasizing that we have to have in this NTB strategy a strong participation, engagement of all the private entities. And the only way we can do that, of course, we will on our own individual private sense want to do it, but we need government guidance, government support for us to exactly do just what it should, to be part of the endeavor to control TB in sync with government. Okay, so this NTB strategies have been shown 3 times already, but I'd just like to point out that we in the private sector are actually very much willing to do our part here. Just let, I'm speaking and talking to the government, just let us perform and do our part, guide us, and we in the private sector will be willing to help. Willing to help in the patient care, high comfort zone and the DOH, is still a lot for the private sector to contribute to enhancing the diagnosis, treatment, preventive therapy in our individual clinics. Okay, as far as engagement as groups, we have the NGO, we have the Philippine Tuberculosis Society, we have the research groups, okay, we have the INSPIRE here. The INSPIRE became a member of the STOP-TB group even before we engaged them for the Philippine Tuberculosis Society relaunching of our TB pavilion. So we have enough capital here. The program will just have to get them on board. So we can help government here, and in research, we do have expertise to do research. Just give us the guidance, give us the policies, help us do research, tell us what to do. So, when you're a researcher, it really discourages you to pursue what you think may be helpful because of the bureaucracy. It's a while to get some studies being approved. And I have heard from not only researchers, but also research contract organizations that they really have a problem with doing this in the country. So in the end, I'd just like to say that we can only achieve what we want, particularly in TB elimination, ending the TB epidemic by working together, both as private group and the government. So let's unite to end TB. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Roa, for those thoughts of yours. Indeed, the private sector should be involved in TB control efforts. There's no way but to be involved in TB control efforts. And indeed, as what you mentioned, there are in fact various avenues and possibly forum for us to be involved. It's not just through direct collaboration, but maybe, as you mentioned, innovative models, strategies, researches, etc. Before we go on further, I would like to encourage those who are listening, if you do have questions, you can see a Q&A panel at the right side of your screen, bottom half, and maybe you can already send your questions through the Q&A panel. Before we segue to just possibly 2 slides to share with you the PTSI initiative in terms of what we term a standalone practice model. So for this strategy, what we did was to possibly have doctors be involved in TB control, and we got their cases and transformed them into case definitions, treatment regimen that can be absorbed by the National TB Program. And what was encouraging based on that initiative was indeed a lot of private practitioners welcomed that venue to be able to share their TB cases. This study was published in the 2012 journal of our Philippine Journal of Internal Medicine. So we entitled it as a standalone practice, an alternative model in the delivery of DOT services by private physicians. Essentially, 25 doctors were able to contribute 465 TB cases through that 1 year. And if you're going to look at these particular cases, some of them were indeed referred to DOT centers, and you can see the profile of these cases. Around 28% of them were smear positive, almost half were smear negative, and as you can see, relatively the outcomes were quite good or encouraging. 85% or 84% these patients decided to be treated or to be managed in the office of the doctors of this private practitioner. And as you can see as well, the profile of these particular individuals, smear positive were around 40%, smear negative was around 29%. And as you can see, again, the outcome was that in terms of completement and cured, 51% of them had that outcome. Yes, there were those who were started on treatment was around 80%. Downside was that there was, of course, loss to follow-up. I think that is one scenario wherein us private practitioners have to improve on as far as following up these patients and in terms of having mechanisms to make sure that these patients do not get lost in the referral system. But what was quite encouraging was that doctors welcomed that someone was able to capture their cases through this mechanism. And in fact, as what Dr. Roa mentioned, they were very willing to share their cases to the National TB Program. At this point, I will now possibly share the questions that was posted in our Q&A panel. Again, Dr. Lardizabal, Dr. Garfin, and Dr. Roa are open for your reactions and questions. The first 2 questions are, I think, addressed more to the National TB Program, and I will let Dr. Garfin answer that. There was one question as far as the state of MDR-TB in the Philippines and what can be done from an NTP perspective aside from doing surveys, realizing the burden of MDR-TB. Celine, maybe you can react to those questions.
So for the MDR, as of 2015, for the year 2015 alone, we were able to enroll 4,210 patients. That is double, or almost twice the 2010 that we started on treatment in 2014. And the cumulative number of patients that we have started treatment since 1999 would now be 16,129. But this is still a challenge for the program since based on the global TB report in 2015, the estimated number of MDR TB patients is 11,100. So we still have a challenge in terms of identifying or notifying these TB cases. And another challenge should be ensuring that they complete their treatment. Since in the latest treatment success rate that we have, that is for the cohort of 2012 patients, we have a treatment success rate of 49% only. But this is already higher than the 41% in 2011. So if we look at the global perspective, the treatment success rate is 50%. But I know this is far below the target of 75%. So for us to address this challenge of low treatment success rate, we did a study to assess what are the main reasons why the patients do not complete their treatment. Most of the reasons, or number one reason, would be due to the adverse drug reactions. So to address this, we expanded the availability of the ancillary drugs. So these are provided free, supported by the Global Fund. We also did training to enhance the capacity of the treatment centers, physicians to address the ADRs. So we did 2 batches of training. This was done by the union physician. Then to also address the high loss to follow-up rate, we are now introducing the use of the 9-month regimen, but this is only in 10 sites, and as of February, we already have 67 patients. Since the routine treatment for MDR currently is 18 months, and we are introducing the 9 months to really help the patients that they will complete their treatment. So that is cutting half the treatment duration. Then another improvement that we did was to front load the enablers that we are providing. Because before, the enablers are given after 1 month or a week of their treatment. But this time, we are giving it before so that they will have the transportation going to the health centers. So that is for the state of the MDR TB cases, where, as I have mentioned, we are still one of the countries with high MDR TB cases, but we are addressing that. Okay.
Yeah. There was also some similar questions. A lot of those who are, I think, in the webinar are just texting me their questions instead of posting in the Q&A. I don't mind that because that means we are close. Having said that, Celine, there's a similar question here. What's the status of Category 2 drugs? I think 3 have raised that question through text. And then a similar question was, how about pediatric drug supplies?
So, yes, as of now, we do not have the national program is still in the process of procuring the Category 2 anti-TB drugs, and the reason for this is that for 2015 we did competitive bidding, which is the process in the government. There was a bid failure twice. No supplier wanted to bid for the category 2 anti-TB drugs. So for us to address this, we did a negotiated bidding, a negotiated procurement from the UNOPS, the United Nations Procurement arm of the UN. Since if we use the UNOPS, it's not cheaper, but there's a waiver that if we buy drugs from a UN agency, we don't need to register the drug since there is a waiver. So as of now, we are awaiting for the delivery of this category 2 anti-TB drugs. But to address the problem, we made a memo to the regional offices for them to procure the ethambutol and streptomycin. So they're making use of the category 1 TB kits, and they procure the streptomycin and the ethambutol. Then during the joint program review, because we want to ask the recommendation of the experts if we can already delete category 2 treatment, since we're looking into the possibility that we'll be only having a category 1 for the drug susceptible, then we have the standard category 4 regimen for those who are resistant, so that it would be easier, more practical for the health workers, and at the same time, we will not be doing the bidding for the category 2. But the recommendation is we will still retain the category 2 anti-TB drugs, so we will have the stock by hopefully by July. Then for the Petra drugs, we don't have the stocks for the reason that we have a problem in the quality of the drug. If you have recall, there's a recall done for the 2014. So this was recalled by FDA, and this was not replaced by the supplier. And we also have a failed bidding for this in 2015. So for us to address the problem of quality, we will be introducing the fixed dose combination. We already sent our procurement, since we will be doing the procurement also through UNOPS, since these drugs are not yet available here. So we have them already listed in the drug formulary for us to introduce the FDC. We already sent our procurement. We already have the quotation from the GDF, since we'll be buying drugs from them. So we're hoping that by quarter 4, we will be using already FDC, which is more child-friendly. But procurement of drugs is really a challenge for the program.
Thank you very much, Celine, for those candid remarks. Maybe I can throw one question again from a text message to Dr. Lourdes Zabal. Alfred, are you there?
Yes.
Yes, Alfred, the main question is, how is the private sector contribution or participation in terms of TB control there in New Jersey?
It's a little different in terms of the situation here in the U.S. I think central to our success in TB is that every case is reported, and by being a reported case, every case is case managed by somebody in the health department. So whether it's a private patient or somebody in the public sector in the health department, there's one central person that oversees the case, makes sure that the treatment is correct, make sure that the treatment is going smoothly. Case management includes taking care of problems like homelessness or substance abuse. So I think the example here is that it's a kind of a patient-centered approach. The patient is not on their own. So you did talk about some of your standalone practice examples. There's still a huge default rate, and I think if we start moving towards sort of each case being reported, then we have to ensure some kind of structure wherein each case is reviewed and followed through. Somehow that should be part of next steps. But certainly, maybe 25-30% of TB cases here are managed by a private doctor. The only difference is that there's somebody within the public sector that looks into the case.
Okay, thank you, Alfred. The next question is maybe we can hear from Dr. Roa. Dr. Roa, can you hear me? Dr. Roa?
Wait. Baka ako nakamute.
Dr. Roa?
One moment. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, sure.
Yes, okay. The main question is, in your point of view, how ready is the private sector in terms of its willingness to join the TB control bandwagon in the Philippines, and what will make them, if you think they're not that ready, what will make them, let's say, really report their TB cases? Do we need a law? Do we need some enticing measures for the private sector to really report them consistently to the National TB Program?
I think we need all of that. But what is important is that there is a clear direction how we can do it. For example, sabihin ng government, refer to the health center. Walang tangkap doon. Hindi hear me pala. Ito pala. Kasi if it's not clear how to make the referral, how the interaction will work, the patient will come back. Doctor, let me go there. There's nobody there, or something like that. So if the procedure is okay, the referral system is set, ang doctor naman, we have varying grades siguro of willingness, but if we see that this will redound to benefit of our patients, and our patients actually will start referring other patients to us because they look at us very concerned sa kanila, then we can have a good number of private doctors following the procedure, and then the bandwagon effect will come soon. So it's clarity of the interaction that has to exist in all places. Hindi lang yung dahil di Dr. Roa, i-honor natin yan. Pero pag ibang doktor, hindi na, wala na. Ganun. I hope this is my personal view.
Yes, sir. Actually, there's a follow-up question. At least we want to hear comments coming from Dr. Lynn Bianson, who's besides me.
Sir, good evening, sir. Yes, sir. Happy World TB Day. World TB Day, yes.
Very nice activity here in Tacloban.
Yes, I heard that you opened the new PTSI center there. So, again, that's a good start of really expanding how the private can come into the picture. Follow-through question lang po regarding the private sector, and this is perhaps corollary also to the MDR question earlier on. Celine mentioned that we have the figures for the MDR-TB cases, what we are doing to them in terms of treatment, but apparently we need to go back to the basics of why these cases came into the picture or why they developed as such, and it's simply because we'll redound to the fact that simple dots or the basic dots has really not been I would say properly implemented. That's why it led to the creation of a generation of MDR-TB cases. While we may be good in addressing the detected MDRs, I think the preventive side should still be a very important undertaking, and I think that's where really the private sector can be of help to the program in terms of preventing future generation of MDR-TB. Then on this note, this is where really the collaboration should come in, that the private is really supporting the program because it's not the program of government, it's really the program of the country. And therefore, while we have good collaborations at the central, perhaps we would also like to hear from, at least from Region 8, where you are right now, how is the interaction or the collaboration of the public and the private out there in Region 8, given that this is now the picture and the direction of the TB program. So perhaps an example of such a region like Region 8 would also give us an idea of how the collaboration is being filtered or trickled down, at least to the regional level, so that we would have an idea po in terms of how we can further expand such collaboration in addressing our directions, our new directions for TB.
Actually, you really hit the nail on the head. So I'm now as a local practitioner, Dr. Santa Paula, to actually tell us how the collaboration is working here in Tacloban, and try to get a perspective that, of course, we in the center in Manila, we thought everything is fine, but there are some points that may have to be improved. Paula, you have to stay here.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Hello, Paula.
What are we doing as private practitioners here in Tacloban, and how are we collaborating with the local government? So, as it is now, the NCP is managed by the DOH, by Dr. Kaidi, and then we also have DOT centers here. It means that when it came to reporting my private cases, I am at a loss on where to forward all these reports, okay, and how to go about in doing it. And then with respect to the other cases, we also have a DOT center here, whomever, since they want to be referred to their centers. So I would personally want our patients to be directly taken care of where they came from. For example, the patient is from Samar or Borongan, no? So I would prefer that he goes back to that center and he be enrolled there. My problem really is not much on the identification or detecting the patients who have TB, but on how do we treat them. So that's why I was asking Dr. Roa, what are our strategies for in our patient-centered care to really strengthen case holding and prevent default. There's not really any more problems handling it.
Okay, thank you very much for those perspectives, Paula. At this point, we receive other questions, and maybe we can ask before we close the session. There are similar questions in the Q&A panel and in my text messages. There was a slide, Celine, as far as health center personnel who will be doing screening as well for possibly DM, etc. Because we do know that comorbidities have to be addressed, and maybe there are some missing TB cases because they are diabetes, and later on we discovered that they're TB. So I think I received 2 text messages. The main question was, how ready are our health center personnel in terms of doing the screening for diabetes so that we can move forward? How's the collaboration? There was a similar concern. How's the collaboration between the NTP, let's say, of DOH and the non-communicable diseases? Non-communicable diseases, the generative diseases, as far as DOH, maybe Celine or Lynn, you can give us some perspective since private practitioners are also interested along those lines.
Let me first address yung patient-centered care
Okay.
na niraise ni Dr. Pola. So, Doc, yung for the patient-centered care, what we're doing now is, diba kapag sinabi kasing DOTS, yung thinking is the patient would come to the health center daily sa health center or sa facility. But we're moving away from that. Our instructions now for the health workers is to ensure that the patients are really taking their drugs even if they are at home. It's not saying na as the health worker, I am the boss, you should follow me. But what we're telling them is the patient and the health worker should discuss how are we going to ensure that the treatment would really be taken by the patient daily. So we started with our PMDT. So we're doing the ComCare, that is the community PMDT care, wherein if the patient cannot really come to the health center, then there would be a community volunteer that will ensure that the drugs of the patient are taken daily. But this is really a big change, and it's hard to change the strict DOT that was introduced in 1997. So what we're doing is we do monitoring, and we always remind the patient that before we are target-oriented, because we want to ensure our targets to be reached, but this time we should ensure that we are providing quality TB care. Then the next question is the collaboration for the TB-DM. For this initiative, we already did an assessment. So this was done with WHO. We have technical assistance from WHO. So we visited some areas, and we already discussed this with the Degenerative Disease Office of the Department of Health that is in charge for the diabetes program. And we have formulated guidelines, and we are now in the process of implementing these guidelines. So how ready are we? Just recently, glucometers were already distributed to the health centers, and DOTS is in place for all health centers. But for the collaboration, we have to still discuss with or to train our health workers on how do we implement the guidelines. So that's how we are now for the TBDM. Unless Dr. Lynn, you want to add?
Yes, I think the basic difference is that TB is an infectious disease, diabetes is not. So just like TB HIV, it's easier to collaborate the two infectious diseases, TB and HIV, but there's some difficulty if you try to integrate an infectious versus that of a non-infectious. But suffice to say that when Celine mentioned that the department really tried to embark and enhance the diabetes program through the provision of glucometers, we're now looking into how the integration can really be undertaken under program setting and in a rural health unit setting. Because right now, the diabetes program is quite strong at hospitals. We have, in fact, seen hospitals having their respective diabetic clinics. But if you would transform this, hopefully that such diabetic clinics can also be found at the level of the RHU, then the integration of TBDM would really be made easier. So that's how we're looking at it, trying to really address the integration of TB and diabetes at the health center level, which is usually a basic core unit of our health services, but at the same time, looking into how it can also be connected with a rather strong collaboration happening at the hospital setup. So that's the way we look at it in terms of the collaboration between these two diseases.
Thank you very much, Celine and Lynn. And I would like to thank those in Tacloban for participating in this webinar as well. Maybe in the next few minutes, I would like to ask Dr. Alfred, Dr. Celine, and Dr. Roa for their closing statements before I wrap up everything. Alfred, can we have some closing statements from Rutgers?
For inviting me to participate. It was quite educational for me, coming from the New Jersey perspective. I'm very interested to see the national TB program in the Philippines continuing its successes that they've seen over the last 20 years. Really, if I can only emphasize a few things. Education is a very important component of TB elimination, and I think also consider strengthening regional expertise. So instead of a top-down approach, really strengthening the local and regional capacity. So best of luck to all the efforts in the Philippines, and let's continue to dialogue moving forward.
Thank you, Alfred. Celine or Lynn from the NTP, any closing statements?
May Lynn naman tayo, Celine na lang.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to try this new technology. It's my first time to be part of a webinar. So from the TB program, we're doing everything, and as I have mentioned, we have our achievements, we have our challenges, but I know that as we move from the MDGs and moving towards SDGs, we still have a lot to do, and we need all the support from our partners from all sectors, and I hope the private sector would understand that it's difficult to change what we have learned or what was strictly taught to us when we do our dots. But I promise that we're doing our best, that as we move towards the SDGs, we will be ensuring a patient-centered care for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Celine. On behalf of NTP, Dr. Roa, maybe we can hear some closing remarks from you, sir, all the way from Tacloban.
Sabihin siya na, ready or not, go kami dito at ng private practitioners to get on the NTB the first step in Malayo, but the first step we have to do all these things. And I'm so glad that we have people running the NTP really also bent in actually engaging us in the private sector to for us all to achieve our goal of ending tuberculosis. I'd just like also to myself thank everyone here present, Alfred, Celine, and you, Gilbert, and of course, and Eloy for having this webinar. Ito very successful. Si Dr. Kalimag, tayo yung nag-umpisa na mag-isip nito. And maybe this is not the last one. I think the next topic will be on TB and diabetes. We will have an endocrinologist on board who can participate in this high-tech level of discussion. Maybe next time the internet speed is better so we can see each other. Hindi lang tayo nakikita yung mga slides. So thank you, and Lynn, the private sector is ready.
Thank you very much, Dr. Roa, for those encouraging remarks. And maybe to close everything, I would like to say that this NTB strategy really requires an open mind. Bold steps should be undertaken, and of course, collaboration remains an important tenet for all of these things to be accomplished, but it can be done. In closing, again, we would like to thank the Philippine Medical Association led by Dr. Minerva Kalimag in terms of having us as partners for this webinar, PTSI, and of course, as what Dr. Roa mentioned, from the Asia eHealth Information Network, Ms. Cha Orhalo, and of course, their Executive Director, Dr. Alvin Marcelo. And indeed, this is just first of a series, and as what Dr. Roa mentioned, the next PTSI-led webinar will be about tuberculosis and diabetes. Good evening to everyone.
Sige pala ang wedding.